Walmart feeling the heat, feeling the pressure amid calls to boycott the company. So this is swelling, and the company's kind of freaking out, understandably so, right? Because we've seen it before. Look what happened with Target. Look what happened with Bud Light. Look what's happened even with Disney, although you could argue that Disney is just giving really, really, really bad content, and therefore nobody actually wants to go and see it. But in the case of Walmart, they're up against it because, this is really something. When you think about the heiress, Christy Walton, who married into the family, and she's, total lib, whatever, she's got her causes, etc. She decided to get political, which is kind of something the company typically does not do. Why? Well, Christy wouldn't have all those billions of dollars. She's one of the wealthiest women in the world now, would she? If it weren't for the conservative American customers that shop and have shopped historically since the 1960s at Walmart. So it makes it especially unsettling, shall we say, to the conservative shoppers that go to this store when they see that the people they have helped create to become American billionaires actually really don't value them that much because, well, they're calling on everybody to protest Trump. It's not going over well. And the company knows that they're trying to distance themselves. They're like, okay, she's not on the board. She doesn't have anything to do with policies of the company, et cetera, et cetera. But what's fascinating? The company actually suffered 10 straight days of losses, which is probably the worst we've seen in 2 decades at the company. And it is amid concerns about this MAGA boycott. You also have tariffs out there, which are causing investors to think twice as well. But the boycott thing, don't underestimate it. Barron's doing a big piece saying, okay, maybe the company is poised for some kind of revival because, it's been 10 days. 10 days straight. I think they saw a little bit of an upside in yesterday's session. We're closed, of course, in the stock market today because it is a holiday, ladies and gentlemen. Juneteenth. Anyway, the heiress at the center of all this is named Christy Walton, and she apparently bought this big ad. We can look at it because everybody's been tweeting about it for those demonstrations for No Kings, right? And she's also had a history of this kind of stuff where she's funded causes that are very anti-Trump, and this is all coming out. And again, it's setting up sort of this situation where the people that have made her family so successful are saying, well, hang on, maybe this isn't fair, maybe this isn't right. Management, as I said, really trying to distance itself from this particular woman because, hey, she really could take the whole thing down. It's like, Christy, don't bite the hand that feeds you, for goodness sakes. And so, again, here's a picture of her. Yahoo News covering this as well. She has a 2% stake now in the company, but she did inherit a 19% stake in Walmart from her late husband, John Walton, when he passed away in that tragic plane accident. They do have one son. We're going to get to him in a moment because he's also in the news today. Very much a liberal as well, though tries to stay perhaps a little less out of the political scene. He'll leave that to mom. Here is Anna Paulina Luna. We had her on the other day, and she talked about exactly this. She's saying, they must really, really dislike those tariffs because, they've come out and said, well, we're going to have to raise prices because of the tariffs. And then you had, of course, the heiress, one Miss Christy Walton, taking out that full-page color ad in the New York Times. That cost a pretty penny, shall we say, especially the full page and color for the New York Times, to basically encourage people to protest against Donald Trump. And I'll just say it's not playing well in Peoria, so to speak. Anna Paulina Luna writing that it's related to the China tariffs, that they're really mad about that. And something that she told us as well, don't forget, China is believed to be playing a role in all of these protests. A gentleman by the name of Neville Singman, Anna Paulina Luna has subpoenaed him alongside James Comer to come and testify before Congress because he spends reportedly most of the year in China, in Shanghai, where he is reportedly being paid to push propaganda that is exactly this, right? These kinds of protests. So you can understand China doesn't really like the tariffs. They have an incentive to maybe say, hey, you know what, Neville, go ahead, go forward with that. And that's what Anna wants to get to the bottom of. He may not show up for his testimony, in which case he would have to be held in contempt. He would have to be effectively sent to jail if he's not willing to testify. We saw that happen to Bannon. We saw that happen to Peter Navarro. So if he were to step foot in this country, who knows if he will, he's going to face the consequences. But she's making this point that maybe this is all tied together. It may just be as simple as this is a brainwashed woman who really, doesn't have any respect for the people. I mean, don't get me wrong, China does not want these tariffs. Walmart, as a corporation, does not want these tariffs. Neville Sigmund, with his, Communist Party, doesn't want the tariffs, is trying to push a Chinese agenda, but it may also come down to the simplicity of a woman who is of ample means and just doesn't like Trump, right? I mean, she's certainly entitled to her opinion, but what makes it difficult, I think, to bear, especially as, conservatives look at this, is we're saying, hey, wait a second, like, you wouldn't have that company, you wouldn't have those billions of dollars, lady, if it weren't for conservatives backing your company. And so this is what is going to become increasingly an issue if people follow through with this and say, I'm not going to shop at Walmart anymore. And we saw them do it at Target. We saw them do it with Bud Light. There's other options out there, right? I mean, Amazon, and hey, it gets delivered easy. Now, in Walmart's defense, they are actually trying to do more online, a la Amazon, and they are also trying very hard to run as far as they can from Christie, because Christie doesn't actually have any involvement in the business. She's living high on the hog, not having to do anything with the business, and they're making that clear. Okay, this lady is not one with us at Walmart. And they put out a statement, and I'm going to quote from that statement. We condemn violence, including when it's directed towards law enforcement and the damaging of property. As a company with associates and customers in the Los Angeles region, they were referring to those protests that you saw last weekend, we remain focused on their safety and that of the impacted associates. This is according to Walmart's VP, Dan Bartlett. They also said, the advertisements from Christy Walton are in no way connected to nor endorsed by Walmart. She does not serve on the board or play any role in decision-making at Walmart. So I'm glad that we cleared that up. But I'm not sure, again, that it's still going to go over well with everyday folks. It comes at a time when obviously Walmart is confronting other challenges. Yes, the tariffs might be a challenge. And so they've come forward and said, hey, you know what? We're going to have to raise prices on everything. I don't know if that's entirely the case. Rob over at 76 Research, my partner, and I were doing some math on this. And when it's all said and done, you shake it out, the tariffs aren't quite as bad as you think. But, hey, Walmart's like, any chance we can get to raise prices, right? Why do they want to have to take slimmer margins? Maybe they shouldn't have to take slimmer margins. This is a capitalist country, and, let the best man win, so to speak. We'll shop where we get the cheapest prices, and maybe we like their politics. But it just shows you the tremendous amount of pressure this company is under. Donald Trump sending out on Truth Social the other day, Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs as the reason for raising prices throughout the chain. Walmart made billions of dollars last year, far more than expected. Between Walmart and China, they should, as it is said, eat the tariffs and not charge valued customers anything. I'll be watching. And so will your customers. A threat from Donald Trump, one that Scott Bessent picked up on when he was asked about it recently on NBC. Let's listen.
It's big news from Walmart. It says it will start raising prices on its consumers, Mr. Secretary, as early as this month due to the tariffs. Now, President Trump out with a very stern warning on social media saying Walmart, quote, should eat the tariffs, adding the company made far more than expected last year. Is the president asking American companies to be less profitable?
I was on the phone with Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, yesterday, and Walmart is, in fact, going to, as you described it, eat some of the tariffs that just as they did in 18, 19, and 20. The other thing, though, that we are seeing, that Doug passed along to me, that with their consumer, the single most important thing is the gasoline price. And gasoline prices have collapsed under President Trump. So we are seeing that. The other thing that will happen, that is a direct tax cut for consumers. Then the transportation costs are also a big input. So let's see what happens. What you were describing was Walmart's earnings call. The other thing that companies have to do, they have to give the worst case scenario so that they're not sued. So, I think overall we are seeing a decline in services, inflation, And we saw inflation come down for the first time in 4 years.
Well, in my conversation with former Vice President Mike Pence, he says
so
he
you get
sees...
the picture. He's like, Walmart, you're going to have to eat them. So maybe that'll affect earnings. That could have an effect, of course, on stock price, at the stock price as well. But it's remarkable. I mean, again, when you look at these numbers, guys, and I know that they ticked up a little bit yesterday, but you look at 10 consecutive trading days of losses. They have not seen that in 20 years. You could go all the way back to June of 2004. So this is a big deal, okay? It's a big deal. They're suffering. They're feeling the heat. And you know what? Maybe Christie should have thought this one through. Maybe just a little bit better, right? Before deciding to take out the full page ad. I mean, if she actually sees a suffering of her own personal wealth, does that actually register? Probably not, because at some point, I think she's worth like $18 billion. Like, at what point do you actually feel it, right? I'm guessing, she's not counting her pennies, so to speak. She's 76 years old. She is not involved in the company. She's not involved in any of the company's trusts, etc. They've been very clear about that. But don't forget, she married one of Sam Walton's sons, okay? So John was the son, and thus she inherited some of his wealth. Her son, of course, inherited a lot of the wealth as well when he passed. If you take a look at this nifty family tree that the Wall Street Journal put out, I was looking at this. So basically, you have Sam, who married Helen, right? And they had 5 kids. 4 kids. John married Christie, who we were just talking about, and she gave birth to a son who is also in the news right now for his liberalness. Okay, so, it's funny how apparently, like, Buffett's son is with him on his liberalness, and it's like, great, like, once you make the money, look what happens to the next generation. That's why I keep saying, you know what? The U.S. needs to get tougher, right? If we don't, I'm going to use Donald Trump's expression, China's going to eat our lunch. Right? China's going to become the next USA, and we'll be lucky to be France, thank you very much. I mean, they got good food, and maybe that's about it. Christie's donations, they tend to be extremely liberal. Since 2020, federal records show that she donated more than $500,000 to the Lincoln Project. You know that one. That's the conservative group. It's very, very, very anti-Trump. She hosted a fundraiser for them in Jackson Hole, for Kamala Harris's presidential campaign out in Jackson Hole, and she's very, very philanthropic. That's how she spends her days on environmental stewardship, as well as, quote, economic development and community support through a group called Innovaciones Alumbra. Is this like a Spanish reference? I don't know. Quote, my interest is in investing in systems that bring positive change to social, environmental, and economic health. This is what she says on the group's website. So she's a philanthropist, and she bred a philanthropist as well. So this is her son, Lucas, and he's putting $15 billion, forgive me, dollars. I think he's got like 38 from his dad. Again, it must be nice, to put into environmental causes. He apparently brought over the head of his philanthropy team and has them now working on these new investments. He's got 3 priorities, like any good heir to billions of dollars should have: ocean conservation, regenerative agriculture, and clean energy. So these are the core sort of foundations of something he's got called Builder's Vision. He founded it 8 years ago. It serves as his, quote, family office. So this is what he's investing in. He wants this impact investment fund. He kind of sounds a little bit like his mom. Now, he hasn't weighed in on any of the political stuff, and as far as we know, he's not terribly political, but you can judge, right? Based on his ESG desires. I thought ESG was over. Didn't we actually finish all that? Didn't we decide that we actually need to invest in things that are going to turn a profit? I mean, he believes he can. And you know what? Hey, more power to him if he wants to spend all that money chasing a dream. I don't know as I'd invest in it, thank you very much. But, people with all this money, as I said, may not be counting their pennies. Howard Buffett, he is the grandson of Warren Buffett. According to this new article in the Financial Times just out today, he has written a book on social value investing, and he sees, quote, no reason why all rich people couldn't follow suit. I know lots of families that have tried to integrate this in their approach to their work, in part because, it boils down to how innovative you are and how willing you are to take those risks. Again, I would just say I thought we sort of went through that, and I think the conclusion was, as much as Larry Fink wanted that to happen, right? And BlackRock was all over that. Let's do ESG and DEI. What was discovered was, at the end of the day, you just need to earn your investors some kind of interest on their investment, right? And if it's not a good investment, then you shouldn't be doing it. Now, hey, if you can get the two things to go hand in hand and you get to follow your dream and your passion and you simultaneously are making money at it, then great, all power to you. But it's not clear that that actually works so well, right? We've discussed this a lot at my company, 76 Research. I encourage you guys to look at this. We had a Father's Day pick out that is up 23% and we believe is actually poised for more growth. You can get all of these picks if you go to 76research.com. Use code word $1 today. I'll tell you, we got another heiress to talk about because the Paramount heiress is up against it. She stands to make $2 billion if she sells her company, Paramount, which includes CBS News, 60 Minutes, to one Skydance. Larry Ellison's son runs that one, but it's not clear the deal's going to go through, in part because they can't seem to come to any kind of terms here on this agreement with Donald Trump and how much he should be paid because of his allegation that they were trying to manipulate the election by manipulating the sound from Kamala Harris. That story coming up.
Trump country is booming. We're building, hiring, and winning in America because energy tax credits put America first, bringing manufacturing jobs home and creating a stronger middle class.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country. More production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers.
And America's comeback depends on American energy. President Trump, keep what works. Don't repeal energy tax credits. Paid for by Built for America.